My name is Carrie Rasmussen. I'm with the Department of Toxic Substances Control. I'm a public participation specialist, and I will be your facilitator today. Today, we have a panel of some of our DTSC experts. We have Carl Palmer, the branch chief of the Safer Consumer Products branch. We have Daphne Mullen. She's our lead of the Chemical and Product Evaluation team. We have Dr. Meredith Williams, the Deputy Director of the Safer Products and Workplaces program. And we have Andre Agalsi. He's the lead of the Chemical and Product Evaluation team. The program today is as follows. We will have a welcome by Dr. Meredith Williams, followed by the summary of DTSC's findings as reflected in the product chemical profile of the NPEs in laundry detergent by Daphne Mullen. This will be followed by the public comment time. And first, we will ask for comments on the specific questions that we've put out that we are requesting input on. Those of you that are joining us via the webcast, please submit your comments via this website, or email address rather, saferconsumerproducts@dtsc.ca.gov. And after the public comments that are specifically addressing the questions that we're requesting, that will be the time for more general public comments to follow. So please provide any comments that you have so that we can take them into consideration and possibly incorporate them as we advance towards drafting regulations. After that time, we will have concluding remarks by Dr. Meredith Williams. The workshop will end no later than 12 o'clock noon Pacific time, or when it has received all the comments, whichever occurs first. Now, please join me in welcoming Dr. Meredith Williams, Deputy Director of the Safer Products and Workplaces program, to give the welcome address.
Thank you, Carrie. Good morning and welcome. In California, water is precious. We found that out during the drought, and the state is taking a great deal of putting a great deal of emphasis on protecting our aquatic resources. For instance, last month, the Water Board proposed amendments to its recycled water policy. Securing water supply while protecting aquatic resources and habitat is the central challenge of the Delta tunnels. And just last week, Californians voted to approve bonds to help clean up contaminated drinking water. In our new Safer Consumer Products 2018 to 2020 Priority Product Work Plan, DTSC committed to protecting California's valuable and limited water resources and aquatic ecosystems from consumer product-derived contamination. Our concerns stem from those chemicals that aren't fully treated in wastewater treatment plants and, when discharged, can enter the environment and adversely impact fish and wildlife, or end up in drinking water. Other contaminants enter the stormwater, which can then flow directly into water bodies around the state. Our concerns are heightened for many chemicals of emerging concern. These chemicals aren't regulated, nor are they commonly monitored, even when aquatic toxicity is well established. I often say that chemicals of emerging concern have actually already emerged and are out in the environment. Today, we'll focus on one set of these chemicals of emerging concern, nonylphenol ethoxylates, or NPEs, specifically those NPEs found in laundry detergents. These chemicals are toxic to aquatic life and are usually found whenever a monitoring study looks for them. When laundry detergent is washed down the drain, those detergents can be a source of contamination. Just last week, US EPA added 13 NPEs to its toxics release inventory so that more information can be gathered about their presence in the environment. EPA is concerned about the ways in which these chemicals break down and become highly toxic. Daphne Mullen will speak about this in some detail during her presentation. As a reminder, this is a pre-regulatory workshop based on our draft product chemical profile. We work hard to engage our stakeholders. whenever we make decisions, and count on getting input in forums such as these, as well as through written public comment via CalSafer. The technical document that's available for public comment now will be finalized based on your input today and in the comment period. A revised document would then become the basis to formally propose rulemaking to list the priority product. The rulemaking process provides additional opportunity for comment. So this workshop is an important part of our process. We're here to listen and to learn. We'll answer any clarifying questions we can, depending on how time allows for that. We appreciate your engagement, as always, and look forward to your input. So thank you, and with that, we'll get started with Daphne Mullen.
Great, thank you, Meredith, and for that context leading into why we're here today. And we'd like to give you a brief overview of our profile and to hear from you as our stakeholders on our proposal to list NPEs and laundry detergent as a priority product. So when we say priority product, we mean that as a product chemical combination that meets these criteria that are specified in the Safer Consumer Products or SCP regulations. And there must be the potential exposures from the candidate chemical in the product, and those exposures need to contribute to or cause significant or widespread impacts. How we go about meeting these criteria or the key prioritization principles are also specified in our framework regulations, and there's a wide range of factors to consider as we do that. When we compile our findings, it's in a narrative format. It is not necessarily a traditional risk assessment. It is not necessarily quantitative. And this allows DTSC to have case-by-case flexibility as we evaluate product chemical combinations to account for the data that are readily available. So as Meredith mentioned earlier, we rely heavily on our stakeholder engagement to make sure that our narrative summaries are correct and accurate, and that DTSC has the information it needs to get through the regulatory process. So for this proposal, we've summarized this narrative evaluation in what we're calling a profile. And we wanted to point out that this is a discussion draft. We want to make sure to consider your input. So we have specific questions that we released with the profile, and if you can provide feedback on that, we can ensure that our content is correct as we advance towards rulemaking. For today, I'd like to walk through some key elements of the profile, summarize the scope of the product and the chemical, summarize some points on the key prioritization principles, share some information about other considerations that contributed to our decision-making, and a short summary on existing alternatives. For the scope of the product, laundry detergents, our intent was to have a broad definition. So we include products in any form that are intended to clean textile products and using any form of washing. So our intent with having a broad definition is to capture the range of products that could be out there and to have a level playing field to make sure that we don't inadvertently include or exclude products that are highly similar, yet still have a way of releasing NPEs into the environment. We've found, as we were doing our research, that it seems like a lot of, or most of, residential or industrial laundry detergents have phased out the use of NPEs. This is our current understanding, but of course the product manufacturers know best, and this is a really important question that we've included in our questions for stakeholders and can influence the scope of regulation. So it's really important to make sure that we get that right. So please make sure to comment on that. For the scope of the chemical, NPEs are surfactants that are used in a wide variety of products. So they are the detergent or the cleaning agent in laundry detergents. As a class of chemicals, they're variable in their form. They can have a branched or linear 9-carbon side chain, and they can also have these ethoxylate units in variable number of lengths. So because it is a variable chemical or class of chemicals, we have a descriptive definition included in our profile. So our definition refers to 2 of the authoritative lists that make up our candidate chemicals list, and that is from the European Chemicals Agency and also from OSPAR, which works in ocean protection in the European Atlantic. So if you have an NPE in any of your laundry detergents and that chemical meets either of those definitions, it would be included in this proposal. So DTSC's concern with NPEs is a result of the breakdown process that occurs. So the NPEs in the environment and in wastewater treatment plants break down into what we call NPEDs, or NPE degradation products. So these can include shorter chain ethoxylates and carboxylates, and those can break down into nonylphenol. What we know about nonylphenol is that it's the most toxic of these NPEDs. It is the best characterized as far as hazard traits, and when organizations do environmental monitoring, that is the chemical that is focused on. So you'll see an emphasis on nonylphenol, or summarized as NP, throughout our profile and emphasized here today. However, the various degradation products have harmful hazard traits associated with them. They are detected in the environment, and DTSC is concerned with their presence as well. And so this flexibility is included in the Safer Consumer Products framework regulations, as the degradation products are included and part of the definition of chemical, and also carry through as we look at adverse impacts and exposures. Oh, sorry, pop-up for nonylphenol. So first, a bit about why we're concerned about NPEDs in the environment. They are harmful to aquatic organisms, mostly in aquatic invertebrates and in fish. It can impair growth, reproduction, development, and survival. Nonylphenol can cause endocrine disruption in fish, and juvenile fish appear to be the most sensitive. And another part of our concern is what happens to these chemicals in the environment. Nonylphenol can persist in the environment, especially when conditions are low in oxygen, and nonylphenol can also bioaccumulate. And this is not always the case, but it can occur, and it's been documented in freshwater and marine organisms. And so this bioaccumulation means that the amount of nonylphenol in an organism is higher than what is in the water. So you'll see here, again, the emphasis on nonylphenol. The extent to which this is true for the other degradation products is a little bit less certain, but for nonylphenol, we have important information here suggesting the environmental presence is a problem. So that's a very short summary on the adverse impacts. On the exposure side, we have a simple diagram depicting how these chemicals get out and about into the environment. So as I mentioned earlier, laundry detergents can contain NPEs. We believe there's an emphasis on these products being available for what we're calling on-premise launderers, or the hotels, hospitals, nursing homes, and organizations like that, somewhere in between residential and industrial. So when these products are used, they are discharged through wastewater, which gets into the wastewater treatment plant. When they go through that treatment process, they break down into those various NPEDs, which are then discharged via effluent into surface water, California's surface water, which of course is habitat for a very important species. So these mixtures are present both in surface water and in sediment, and also in these organisms. And there's other pathways that are important and relevant as well, through biosolids and recycled water. So when we've evaluated existing data for California and for the United States, we found quite a bit of data in these media, and we found reasons for concern for NPEDs being included in these pathways. So the focus of today is to focus on that main pathway through wastewater effluent, but there's definitely more data and information in the profile about those other pathways as well. So DTSC is not the first organization to be concerned about nonylphenol ethoxylates and aquatic protection. Other authoritative organizations have come up with what we're calling aquatic guidelines, standards, or criteria, summarized as GSCs. Or these are levels that are considered to be protective for the aquatic life. So each of these GSCs that have been developed have a different lens, they have a different focus, and they all consider protectiveness a little bit differently. And none of them are exactly perfect for SCP. They were not designed for our program. And so we consider all of them equally, and we don't prefer one over another. So we look at the values that these organizations have put together as a reference point to compare to environmental monitoring data. And when we do that, we see quite a bit of overlap between the values that they've developed and the range of detections in California and the rest of the United States. So you can see that they look at that these GSCs are developed for different environmental media. There's a range of values, and there's some overlap here. So it's also important to note that some of these organizations consider an effective nonylphenol concentration. And so what that means is that these effective nonylphenol concentrations is a way of summarizing the impacts from the range of NPEs that are out there. So it's an easy way to look at the cumulative impact from the exposure, since the NPEs are found as mixtures in the environment. So what this graphic is showing is the specific GSE values that have been developed, and it's really important to consider those, how the cumulative impacts come into play. So for example, these values are for the freshwater environment, and looking at a real environmental monitoring report, they detected nonylphenol at 1 microgram per liter, and you'll see that is at the bottom of the range for the GSCs. So it is in that realm of potentially being harmful for aquatic life, but at the lower end compared to the breadth of GSCs that we have. So this publication, when they did look at 2 other NPEDs, and when you account for that, using that effective nonylphenol approach, you find that the effect is 6 times higher than just looking at nonylphenol alone. So we see that nonylphenol concentrations are at levels that are concerning since they overlap with the GSCs, but then we find if you can get that data to look at the other NPEDs, then the concentrations are much higher and definitely put you at a higher level compared to these GSCs. And so the nonylphenol detections, even though they are the most prevalently measured analyte, that's really just part of the story. We also have some indicators of widespread exposure through detections in wastewater and in biota, especially marine organisms. So we found that in some California studies, NPEDs are frequently detected in these media and can be found at concentrations higher than other chemicals of emerging concern. We've also found that in some California wastewater data that the nonylphenol concentrations have been pretty steady over the past decade. And this is interesting because we've heard a lot about phase-outs from all sorts of products. However, it seems like there's still room for improvement for getting nonylphenol out of being a source to California. And there have also been detections in the whole food web, down from plankton, through mussels, fish, birds, and all the way up to marine mammals. So these detections are important considering California is very ecologically rich. We're a high population state, and there are a lot of wastewater treatment plants. So to illustrate how these detections can relate to significant and widespread impacts, we have some maps in our profile illustrating species distributions for some threatened and endangered species in California, overlaid with wastewater treatment plant discharge points. So for example, here in Northern California, we have the endangered green sturgeon, and they can live up to 70 years. They live most of their life in inland waters. So in addition to being exposed to NPEDs through this contaminated water, they also feed by scraping up organisms along the river bottoms. So they're also incidentally ingesting contaminated sediment as well. So looking at these types of species is important since they're at such risk for extinction. And so impairments to growth, reproduction, and development from chemicals such as NPEDs can be particularly harmful. So another element that played into our decision-making is the amount of information, the amount of concern by aquatic experts and other regulatory bodies. So in California alone, there's been some significant efforts both from the San Francisco Bay Regional Monitoring Program and also through the State Water Board to get increased monitoring for these chemicals in the environment. The Air Resources Board has also phased out NPEs in their consumer products regulation for volatile organic compounds. And DTSC has also received some comment letters from water agencies asking the Safer Consumer Products Program to do something about getting NPEDs out of the environment. US EPA has also taken some action recently, and abroad there have been several restrictions, especially in the cleaning products, to get NPEs out as a source. There's been a long list of voluntary efforts that industry has been going through for decades to get NPEs out of their products as well. Here is just a short summary. So TERSA is a trade association representing industrial launderers, and there were initiatives back with US EPA to voluntarily phase out NPEs. The status of this phase out is unconfirmed, so it would be really important, especially as we consider the breadth of potential regulation, to understand if this is indeed the case. Other groups include the Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals, which is a group of clothing manufacturers that are asking for NPEs to get out of the textile manufacturing process so they aren't discharged abroad when the clothing is made, and also wherever the clothing is discharged, because it can leach out through consumer washing. Home Depot has also asked for these chemicals to be removed from paint and carpets recently. So because of all these concerns, some manufacturers have already replaced NPEs in their products, and some organizations have evaluated these alternatives and looked at some of their associated hazards. These reports suggest that the alternatives have some aquatic toxicity, and they can also degrade. They can degrade to less harmful chemicals. So once the Safer Consumer Products Program goes through the regulatory process for this priority product, the laundry detergent manufacturers would have to consider replacement options and explore impacts and trade-offs associated with their replacement so that we don't end up with regrettable substitutes. So DTSC has not conducted an alternatives analysis on these alternatives, because that discretion is left to the product manufacturers. But DTSC does have quite a bit of support for various tools and sources through our alternatives analysis guide to help product manufacturers inform their decision making. So here we are now in this priority products phase, and we're not at that alternatives analysis phase yet. So we just wanted to remind you that this public comment portion is really important to make sure that we're all heading in the right direction. We're here in this proposal phase where we're refining our profile leading into rulemaking. So it'll be really important to hear from you and get your comments here today and through written comment. So if you can please use our CalSafer system. This is our online repository for all comment periods and our Safer Consumer Products documentation. And it's very easy to submit a comment, and you upload a PDF, and staff will review it. Make sure that you get it in before the deadline, which is in 2 weeks, June 25th. So here is the website to get to CalSafer. And if you have any further questions, we have various staff here can help support you. And it's also really important to make sure to sign up for our e-list. This is our primary method for reaching information out to our stakeholders as we evolve through the process. And you may have gotten information about this workshop here today through another means. And so if you aren't clued in through this e-list, please make sure to sign up. And with that, I'll pass it over to Carrie.
Thank you, Daphne, for that very informative summary. It's now time for the public comment portion. So please turn in your comment cards at this time so that we can call you up or call you for your comments. Carl Palmer is going to put them in order, and then Rob will bring the microphone to your seat. And those of you that are joining us via webcast, please email those comments at this time to saferconsumerproducts.dtsc or at dtsc.ca.gov. That way we can include your comments as well.
Thanks, Gary. So we have one commenter on our questions portion, and that is Lizette Van Vliet. Lizette, I'm sorry, I always mess up your name, representing the Breast Cancer Prevention Partners. And I think Rob Brucia will be giving you the microphone.
Thank you. Lizette Van Vliet.
Thank you.
That's okay. From Breast Cancer Prevention Partners. So first of all, we'd like to thank the DTSC for giving this workshop and giving us the opportunity to comment. For those who don't know our organization, we were formerly the Breast Cancer Fund. It's a national organization working on preventing breast cancer by eliminating our exposure to toxic chemicals and radiation linked with the disease. We have read in the proposal that human exposure to nonylphenol ethoxylates is not the focus of the proposal. And we would just like to emphasize that alkyphenols as a group, to which nonylphenol ethoxylates belong, are considered endocrine disruptors. And as such, they are implicated in the currently excessively high rates of breast cancer. We refer you to the publication in Environmental Health, State of the Evidence 2017, an update on the connection between breast cancer and the environment. In particular, when experiments were done with 4-nonylphenol, which is a breakdown product of nonylphenol ethoxylates, mice treated with it developed mammary cancer at higher rates and experienced higher rates of metastases at younger ages. An in vitro study on breast cancer cells showed that 4-nonylphenol has the ability to increase the activity of the enzyme responsible for creating estriol, which is an estrogenic hormone. And high levels of estrogen have been linked to breast cancer. And alkyphenols in general were also shown to increase the replication rates of estrogen-dependent breast cancer cells in an in vitro study on breast cancer cells. All of this information is on our website. And again, we refer you to the publication of the State of the Evidence 2017. Now, because nonylphenol ethoxylates are getting into the environment, we're concerned that there will be direct and indirect exposure. And because of the properties of persistence, bioaccumulation, and toxicity, it seems difficult for us to believe that humans will not come in contact, and there have been biomonitoring studies that have shown human exposure. Therefore, we think that human health impacts are a concern. We also believe that textiles that are manufactured with nonylphenol ethoxylates release nonylphenol ethoxylates during the washing. And in 2012, the Greenpeace Research Lab did a report of a variety of textiles showing a significant amount of release into water. So we feel that the laundry detergents is not the only place to look as a source for these chemicals. That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Lisette. I think we have an online question here. Okay, well, we have submitted a letter actually from the Alkyphenols and Ethoxylates Research Council, Barbara Losi, who's the director. I'm looking here to see if there's a question in here. And I don't see a question. Was there any email associated with this, or just the letter submitted? Okay. Well, we've got plenty of time. It's a short letter. I'll just read it into the record, and we'll put it in CalSafer. So this is comment on NPEs in laundry product chemical profile for public meeting 611. The Alkyphenols and Ethoxylates Research Council appreciates this opportunity to comment on the California DTSC document, Product Chemical Profile for NPEs in Laundry Detergent. For more than 20 years, APERC and its member companies have been actively engaged in the conduct and review of the toxicological and environmental fate, occurrence, and ecotoxicity of alkyphenol-based chemistries, including nonylphenol ethoxylates, or NPEs. APERC will provide written comments to DTSC that will address the characterization of the hazards, potential adverse impacts, of NPE and their degradation intermediates, as well as their exposures in California, and whether these justify concern for significant or widespread adverse impacts in California, as required under Article 3, Section 69503.2a of the Safer Consumer Products Regulations. Today, APERC would like to emphasize that the selection of priority products under the Safer Consumer Products Regulations should be anchored in a strong, robust, science-based understandings of the hazards and exposures of candidate chemicals in California. This will ensure that DTSC focuses its resources and the resources of affected businesses on candidate chemicals and priority products that warrant the greatest priority due to their exposures and risk in California as required under the Safer Consumer Products Regulations. In the NPE and laundry document, DTSC asked for comment on whether the information on adverse impacts and exposure is sufficient and clear. APERC comments will respond to these questions and will reiterate that the data provided is neither sufficiently robust nor adequately based on the scientific principles of risk assessment to justify a concern for significant or widespread adverse impacts in California as required under the Safer Consumer Products Regulations. Therefore, consideration of NPEs as a candidate chemical in laundry detergent or any product category is not warranted. Thank you. Signed, Barbara S. Losi, Director of the Alkyphenols and Ethoxylates Research Council. So thank you for your comment, APERC. We'll put that into the record. And now, do we have any other ones from online? No, we don't. So then we'll move to our general comments. Here in the room, we have Andrea Ventura from Clean Water Action.
Hi, my name is Andrea Ventura. I am the Toxics Program Manager for Clean Water Action. We are also a national organization that was originally founded to pass the Clean Water Act and also eventually the Safe Drinking Water Act. So as you can see, we have a very strong interest in water and its safety, both for human reasons and for environmental reasons in themselves. As Clean Water Action has been part of the Safer Consumer Products process since the concept of this program was a twinkle in the legislature's eyes. And throughout that time, we have advocated very strongly that the program not only look at human impacts, but also look at environmental endpoints and focus on them as well. And so that's why we were very glad to see this product category and analysis come forward because there are strong environmental and ecosystem implications here. And that in and of itself is worthy of taking action and trying to find the best solutions for products that are having these effects. That said, I am going to bring up a couple of human issues as well, because I think it strengthens the need. You know, one of the reasons we protect the environment is to protect the environment, but part of it is also because of human health and quality of life. And so we do believe, as our analysis of this discussion paper is continuing, it's lengthy, but our reading to date is that it is very clear. It sets a good platform for why this is an issue. These chemicals are an issue in these products. We would agree with breast cancer prevention partners that these are chemicals we should be looking at beyond just laundry detergents, but this is a good place to start. And we think that you've laid out a very clear demonstration of the toxicity of these chemicals as a whole and the scope of its presence in the aquatic environment. But I do want to bring up a couple of things that I think get to your point of demonstrating significant and widespread adverse impacts and implications for water authorities and other governments. First of all, and we recognize that the human impacts have not been the focus of this analysis, but I think they strengthen the the argument here. First of all, you make a clear you make it clear that these chemicals are bioaccumulative. They move up the food chain. That obviously can affect other wildlife that are eating species in the water, affect the ecosystems. However, last year, the State Water Board took a very important step in recognizing human subsistence fishing and tribal cultural uses as being beneficial uses of some California waterways. And in the years ahead, waterways are going to be start being designated as supporting subsistence fishing. These are usually communities of color or low-income communities where people depend on these fish for basic sustenance, and they are consuming high levels of it. So, I learned a lot from my colleague here from Breast Cancer Prevention Partners from her comments, but we can see a direct link to human exposure there. And that is something, and I would also say that you make the point about salmonids in the discussion paper. This is something that our tribal communities and tribal governments have been very concerned about, contamination of salmonids in enclosed waterways. So that is one impact that we need to be looking at. We do also have concerns about effects on drinking water and the expense of trying to treat these chemicals out of drinking water sources, particularly when we start looking at direct potable reuse of wastewater, which is in California's future, given our history of drought and our expectation that that will continue in the future. And finally, I will add that the costs of 2 wastewater agencies, it was back, I don't remember the exact year, but I would say going back to like 2006, I was involved with, in Santa Clara County, with wastewater agencies who were looking at these chemicals at that time, expressing concern about how are they going to get them out so that they would meet their water quality requirements. So it's time that we did something about this, and if we're seeing numbers or levels staying stable, we're not making the progress we need to address them. My last point is that I think this is a perfect place, the Safer Consumer Products program, for these chemicals to be addressed. And that is because of the comment or the point that was made earlier, that some of the alternatives may also have aquatic toxicity implications. This is going to allow companies to not just make a decision to switch out of something or phase something out and then have to come back and do it again because what they chose was the wrong solution. So this is going to provide a collaborative and a scientifically robust process by which we can make the best decisions as to how to move forward with these products. So we want to congratulate you. We support this moving forward, and we thank you for a very clear document.
Thank you for your comment. Okay, so at this time, we don't have any comments or questions from online, and we have some time, and we'll query the audience here if there anyone that wants to submit a comment or ask a question. Okay, seeing none, I think we can move on. I will encourage people to go to CalSafer and submit comments within the next couple of weeks to provide any comments. We would look forward to all and input. Thank you.
Yes, so please submit your comments. It closes on June 25th. And without further ado, I'd like to bring on Dr. Meredith Williams for the closing address.
Thank you. Well, that was certainly short and sweet. But despite that limited length, I think we did get some valuable input, very helpful. And we will look forward to the submitted comments that maybe take some of those issues and dig into them a little bit more. As always, we're always so pleased with the usefulness of the engagement that we have, and we'll look forward to that. So thank you for your attendance today, and thank you, Daphne, and everyone who worked hard to put this together. And hopefully online you were able to participate effectively, and if not, please let us know. We're happy to make ourselves available and we will keep you posted on our progress. Thank you.